Well, happy Monday. Back at it with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you for joining us each and every weekday morning. Took Friday off, sick day, but back at it. Another full week of action to cover. We've got some big things coming up this week in litigation against Illinois gun laws that we'll tackle. So be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and stay up to date with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily with the Center Square and America's Talking Network on YouTube. And get the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Now, coming up today, we're going to talk about the state's employment picture. Some reports put out last week, and Governor J.B. Pritzker discussing unemployment and also a audit of the Illinois Department of Employment Security. So we'll touch on that. We'll also talk with William Kelly out of Chicago, an independent reporter, to get his take of what's going on in the Windy City. But also, we've got to tackle something that's top of mind for a lot of people in Illinois. We have the second highest property taxes, and if you have voted early, you're likely going to see a question on the ballot. We'll take a look at that question, and also we'll tap into an Illinois House hearing from last week that touched on the state's property tax situation. So we'll talk about all of that here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning as we break down news that's important to you, the Illinois taxpayer. All right, so get the latest headlines at thecentersquare.com. And like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network, and get the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Should the Illinois Constitution be amended to create an additional 3% tax on income greater than $1 million for the purpose of dedicating funds raised to property tax relief? It's a question that you'll see on the November 5th general election ballot here in Illinois. What exactly does that mean? And what about Illinois' second highest in the nation property taxes? That came up during a Illinois House hearing last week where they were talking about extensions and freezes and a variety of other things, but obviously a lot of focus on Illinois' property taxes and a non-binding referendum for the entire state to sound off on. And there's actually 3 of them, and one of them we're going to focus on today with Illinois in Focus Daily. Good morning. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network, and join us each and every weekday morning as we break down things important to you, the taxpayer. So let's get into this because it's well known. Illinois' tax rates among the highest in the nation. When you look at overall tax burden, including corporate taxes, we're regularly right up there at the top of the list. Places like Chicago, the tax burden is even higher than other places throughout the state. You've got, while Democrats have heralded that they're going to get rid of the 1% grocery tax, we also have among the highest gasoline taxes in the country. Definitely the highest in the Midwest. If you just go from even central Illinois, not even talking about Chicago and the suburbs where gas is much more expensive than in central Illinois, but going from central Illinois down to Missouri, for instance, I mean, there's like a 40 cents per gallon difference. And most of that seems to be because of the local and state gas taxes on Illinois drivers. It's not just the gas tax, motor fuel tax. It's also a sales tax on top of that that's worked in. So you've got those tax burdens just compounding, but those are just, use taxes, so to speak, right? Sales taxes. What about that property tax? Illinois has among the highest property taxes, and regularly we see that on the list as the state continues to see property taxes increase. Now, Illinois does have, a system of property taxes where the bulk majority of your property tax bill goes to your local school district. And it also goes to other local taxing bodies. If you have a community college district that's taxpayer funded, if you have a sewer and sanitation district that's taxpayer funded, if you have your municipal government, your township government, if you look at your tax bill when you pay your property taxes, all of that stacks up. And if you think that you're getting away from having to pay property taxes because you're a renter, well, your landlord has to pay those property taxes as well. So clearly, they're pushing that down onto the renter, I would imagine, right? Because you always hear in the conversation about taxes, well, if you tax a corporation or a company, they're just going to pass that on to the consumer. I would imagine the same thing goes for landlords. So let's go into what was discussed a bit last week at an Illinois House Revenue and Finance Committee. This is a Illinois House committee that looks at the state budget and a variety of other tax and spend issues. But George Cardenas, he's the Cook County Board of Review, and he was there testifying about a variety of different things and acknowledged that property taxes are a big issue, especially in the Cook County and surrounding suburbs where they're seeing their property taxes go up considerably.
Why I'm here and why we're here. Illinois residents are struggling under the increasing regressive property tax system. Last year, we saw significant spikes in the south suburbs where some taxpayers saw their bills double, and now Chicago is facing the same storm. In particularly, I'd like to mention Pilsen because it's a neighborhood that I've been working on with those constituents where increases are now around 91%. And as you know, these increases hit communities of color especially hard. Hispanic and African-American families are facing unbearable tax burdens.
So again, the tax per your property doubling in some instances, and the percentage is continuing to climb. And this is something that they were trying to tackle during this House committee, especially as it impacts seniors and those on fixed incomes and the like. But Cardenas also talked about the proposed referendum on the statewide ballot. And I want to go to this really quick. This is a sample ballot for my neck of the woods, all right? I live in Sangamon County, so I vote in Sangamon County. Obviously, you can pull up your own sample ballots wherever you vote. Just go to your election office and you'll be able to find that. But, it's got all the questions for county board races, congressional races, state house races, obviously my state house race. There's no Democrat candidate, so there's no competition there. But if you look at right here at the top, statewide advisory questions, and we'll have to talk more about all of these, breaking them down in the future here, but we're just going to focus on this second one for right now. And the question that is being asked to everybody, and these are non-binding questions, meaning if this thing passes, it's not going to actually change anything. So it's an advisory question. It's just advising government on these things. So here's the question that impacts property taxes. Should the Illinois Constitution be amended to create an additional 3% tax on income greater than $1 million for the purpose of dedicating funds raised to property tax relief? So really, this sounds like some kind of way to get around the state's constitution, which says there needs to be a flat income tax. And if you recall, what was it? Was it 2020 or 2022? I think it was 2020, not 2022. In 2020, the statewide ballot question was, should the state's constitution be amended to change the flat income tax rate to a graduated or a progressive income tax, where the more money you make, the higher of a tax rate you pay? That failed. Voters voted against that. So is this a workaround? Again, the question here, should the Illinois Constitution be amended to create an additional 3% tax on income greater than $1 million for the purpose of dedicating funds raised to property tax relief? Obviously, it's a question in front of voters. Early voting's on the way now. It's ongoing, but that's a proposed referendum for voters. And you've got Cardenas. He broke this down and talked a bit more about it. Again, from the Cook County Board of Review, he talks about this proposed referendum.
Why I'm here and why we're here. With the Illinois Property Tax Relief Fund and the proposed constitutional amendment on the ballot this November, we have an opportunity to not just provide immediate relief, but to create a long-term solution that links their property taxes to what families, again, can afford to pay. This is about equity, fairness, and giving Illinoisans the security they need to stay in their homes and communities. What we need from this committee, your support, not only supporting the legislation, but also for a broader movement to make Illinois a fair, more equitable state for all its residents.
Now, it sounds like he was there advocating for this and encouraging the House to do more to support this idea. Wasn't the only one there talking about it. Former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn was there as well, talking about this referendum.
So this referendum that's going to occur on November 5th, I think there'll be a huge bipartisan majority for this idea of a surcharge of 3% on millionaires in order to fund significant annual mandated property tax relief for people who live in homes all across Illinois in every single county. So I think that's my point for today. I want to thank everybody for listening.
So he testified to the committee, but he also talked about some of the other numbers here and goes into detail about the number of millionaires in Illinois versus the number of property tax payers in Illinois and just taxpayers in general. Here's Pat Quinn talking about that from last week's committee hearing.
Should we raise the income tax surcharge only on millionaires in Illinois in order to raise revenue for property tax relief? Well, I looked it up. There are 77,323 millionaires in Illinois. These are men and women, businesses, whatever, who have declared more than $1 million, declared more than $1 million in adjusted gross income for a particular tax year. We have 6,286,664 income tax payers in Illinois, people, all of us who pay income tax.
So he's, in a way, talking about the minority number of taxpayers who make more than $1 million, and that includes businesses. But this referendum, again, would try to bring about a way to get around the flat tax and have like a surcharge if you're a millionaire, and that would be statewide. He goes on to talk about how much revenue he's been told that the state could bring in.
And I asked the Illinois Department of Revenue if we did have a 3% surcharge on millionaires in Illinois, just on those folks, how much revenue would be generated by that surcharge for property tax relief? Well, they just responded to me and they said $4.5 billion. So that's 77,323 millionaires, if they had to pay 3% more, would generate $4.5 billion for property tax relief in Illinois. That could fund whatever well-designed circuit breaker program came up.
So, again, the idea is to increase taxes on people who make more than $1 million or businesses that make more than $1 million. But this is just an advisory question. It wouldn't actually change things. Because if you recall, in 2020, they tried to change the flat tax to a progressive tax, and voters rejected that idea. Here's Governor Pat Quinn, former governor of Illinois, again, trying to advance this question and why this non-binding referendum is so important, he says.
The point of the matter is referendums move the legislature, whether it be a referendum to reduce the size of the legislature, establish recall for governor, or to set up the Citizen Utility Board. That was done by referendum. So this referendum that's going to occur on November 5th, I think there'll be a huge bipartisan majority for this idea of a surcharge of 3% on millionaires in order to fund significant annual mandated property tax relief for people who live in homes all across Illinois in every single county.
But obviously, that doesn't address another question. A lot of those who consider themselves conservative fiscally They say that, what about budget cuts? What about shrinking the size of these taxing bodies? What about looking at ways to reduce overhead? And this is a pretty consistent question when you talk about tax and spend. You got one side, tax up, and you're increasing taxes, especially property taxes regularly, even though they've increased the amount of funding going to schools from the state. Still, you got property taxes going up in Illinois, second highest property taxes. Overall tax burden is among the highest, among the highest gas taxes. You can go down the list. But back to George Cardenas from the Cook County Board of Review. He was asked about, what about budget cuts? Why isn't that part of this conversation?
But this comes at the very top, and you just got to bring it down to that level to say, guess what, folks? We're not going to be able to afford the entire cake. So this is what the priorities are going to be. But this body will make those decisions and pass it on to the larger body in the General Assembly. There's a lot to talk about this. This is not an easy thing at all. I'm not suggesting that whatsoever. There's a lot of holes. There's a lot of pieces that need to be debated. And those questions that you're asking, I'm having with other representatives and other senators. Understandably, there's a cost. Understandably, it's going to put pressure on the budget, on the state budget. Understandably, yes. And understandably, there's a pressure on the homeowner that they just can't do it anymore. So all of that comes into play, and this is why I'm here. It's that simple.
So budget cuts, obviously something that's on the mind of people, but instead of going through the budgets with a fine-tooth comb, we've seen increased budgets, including increased state spending. Right now, we're in the largest spending plan in state history. Governor Pritzker enacting that for the budget that started July 1st. It was $54 billion, and obviously a lot of that includes more state funding for K through 12 schools, for instance. The Cook County Assessor's Office also asked about, what about budget cuts?
You have the ability to say, hey, we're taxing people out of our homes, not because taxes are going up for any reason other than the fact that we're spending more money.
Representative Reich, I don't disagree with the premise that we need to have a really strong eye looking on spending. When I go to my town halls where I speak with the public and there are people in tears talking to me about how impossible their property tax bills are, those same people also, when they learn about how the tax system works, they also immediately start talking about their local school district and how their school superintendents are paid $300,000 or more, and there's a lot of cash on the balance sheet. I think all of these things are important. So I wouldn't advocate changing the PTEL law, which provides a limitation on growth and levies, and I advocate for.
So again, we can get into some of the weeds there about PTEL and all these other property tax issues, but I think what he's talking about there of people frustrated in tears saying they can't afford their property taxes. In some instances, it's doubling on individuals, and hits seniors the hardest, hits those on fixed incomes the hardest. And when they look at their property tax bill, the K through 12 is among the highest, and then all of a sudden you've got a drill down of the salaries, and then you see a superintendent making $300,000+ for their K through 12 school district. So the frustration there from taxpayers in Illinois seeing those things. Where are the budget cuts? Why is there never a thorough conversation about budget cuts? But obviously there's a question now on the ballot. It's a non-binding question, but there's a question on the ballot to say, hey, why don't we change the tax structure so we could tax people more? Governor Pritzker was asked about the K through 12 funding, and last week he broke it down and talked about how they want to increase $350 million each year to K through 12 schools. Is that helping with schools' outcomes? In some districts, maybe. Other districts, not so much, but he talked about that a bit. But clearly, this is an ongoing question that's going to be raised more and more and more. And ahead of the November 5th general election, you've got that question on the ballot. Again, should the Illinois Constitution be amended to create an additional 3% surcharge, a tax on income greater than $1 million for the purpose of dedicating funds to raise for property tax relief? That's the question on the ballot. Early voting's underway now. So what's it going to be? It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks so much for being with us each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and get the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, make it happen. Got to turn that microphone on. Here we go. All right. Testing 1, 2. Stand by. The city of Chicago no longer has ShotSpotter in place while crime continues to be a major concern on the ground, and no one better to talk about that with us than independent Chicago reporter William Kelly. He joins us now by phone. William, thanks for taking time, and let's get right on into it. Some of the headlines here, obviously, with ShotSpotter no longer in place, how's the crime situation? Has it improved, or have we seen reports of people just being found shot instead of police responding through ShotSpotter to get on the scene much quicker? Good morning.
God bless you, Greg. Welcome to the jungle. Yes, we are heading down to Chinatown this morning to report on a 27-year-old woman who was shot near the Red Line on the south side. You have to really keep some kind of sense of humor about this, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean, it is outrageous. Welcome to Chicago. The funding at public safety is absolutely taking a hit, to say the least. Double-digit shootings again this weekend. 2 people dead, 2-year-old toddler shot. As I mentioned, this poor woman shot near a CTA Red Line. But here's the real problem, okay? 24-year-old Jonte Baker, he carjacked, kidnapped, robbed a driver while he was on pretrial release for felony theft, okay? We have other people who were arrested yesterday by CPD. God bless them. Okay. When I talk about the failures of law enforcement, I'm talking about the chief law enforcement official in Cook County, Kim Foxx, the state's attorney. I'm not talking about the police. Okay. Everybody's on edge. I get it. But, so a judge, a Cook County judge, just let a guy out, again, last night, on another gun charge. God only knows. The CPD is probably going to have to arrest him again today. But it's a revolving door, Greg. What can I tell you?
Talking with William Kelly, independent Chicago reporter here with us to talk about the latest headlines out of Chicago. Again, 28 shootings, 2 dead. You're reporting that 2-year-old toddler was shot Saturday evening. Charges against people arrested for DNC protest being dropped. Seems to add to the culture here as you're also on your way to report out another shooting from overnight. You've also got the issue of the migration and the taxpayer cost for this, $100 million going to favorite healthcare staffing. Talk about, I guess, the sentiment. I mean, we're in an election year here. Early voting's underway through much of Illinois. Early voting, I believe, in Chicago and Cook County is going to start early next month. Is there a lot of frustration on the ground when it comes to how much tax dollars are going out to migrants?
Well, 100% yes, which is essentially the amount of money that's going to migrants. Another $100 million to favorite healthcare staffing. I think we broke the story on your show, Greg. I don't know. It seems like a few years ago, but I don't know.
It is amazing to think that this issue has been going on throughout the entirety of the Biden-Harris administration and really coming into stark focus when tens of thousands of people arriving in Chicago from the southern U.S. border being inundated because of the millions that are crossing. They don't have the resources down there to take care of that. So, hey, sanctuary cities, you guys are saying you're not going to enforce immigration law. Well, here you go. Immigration law is not being forced on the southern border. Well, how about you handle this? And then we see the exorbitant costs, over $1 billion in state tax dollars, let alone the hundreds of millions more from city tax funds. But obviously, this is all going to somebody's pockets.
Yes, it 100% is, and that is what that's what we have been on from day one. Favorite healthcare staffing. Another $100 mil, so what is that? $300 mil now, plus obviously, and the reason why Mayor Johnson said he canceled Shot Spotter is because it was costing the city, a measly, 50 mil or whatever. That he spends that much on culturally sensitive food for migrants. On a quarterly basis, I suppose. Greg, ask yourself, if William Kelly snuck into a country, would he demand, deep dish pizza for dinner every night? No, I would be happy with whatever they gave me, but apparently the migrants aren't happy with their meals. They need you and I to pay for them to have culturally sensitive meals every night. I would say that things like that are starting to add up, not only obviously financially, but are starting to kind of add up in the minds of Chicagoans, Greg.
Talking with William Kelly, independent Chicago reporter, about some of the headlines. I do see your clip on X of you asking the mayor some of these questions from what was this, last week or the week before, but obviously people can find that on X. Give us the information on where people can find your reporting at.
Yeah, William, at William J. Kelly on X. My head is still spinning from being in City Hall. As you know, God bless you, Greg, you reported on this when no one else, hardly, other than Tucker Carlson, was willing to report on it. Lightfoot yanked my media credential because I was asking her real questions about crime, actual statistics, I finally got my credential back. I got to City Hall, and I asked myself, I looked around and I went back to the same city, the Chicago press room, which if you've never been there, you got to go, Greg. You'll feel like you're in some kind of like a museum or something, but it actually is a functioning press room. And the first thought that came to my mind is, was it worth it, to go through all the trouble to get back to this? And the answer after interviewing the mayor was yes. Hell yes. Okay. This is extremely important. Chicago's a real city with real people. They deserve, a real reporter asking real questions. And that's exactly what, I think that's what I was put on this planet to do. So I'm just going to do it for as long as God God wants me to.
William Kelly, greatly appreciate your time as always. We'll check back in as we see these stories progress, and definitely see how things are going on the ground there. Be safe, all right? We'll talk soon.
God bless you, Greg. Thank you very much.
All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for taking time with us each and every weekday morning. Got a couple of more segments for you here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning as we give you things you need to know about living in the state of Illinois and how you're impacted as a taxpayer. So stay tuned here. More with Illinois in Focus Daily. Challenge against Illinois' firearm owner's ID card moving forward, and it's something that I think is really going to get to the crux of the question of, is that FOID card constitutional? I chatted with Gun Save Life Executive Director John Bach late last week about the latest in this case, and you can find that story at thecentersquare.com. Again, go to thecentersquare.com with Illinois in Focus Daily. You can stay up to date with the latest, including the latest in gun ban litigation, as we see how these cases are progressing and where they're going. As we've been tracking, of course, the challenge against Illinois' gun and magazine ban. That is coming up with the 30-day window. September 20th was the end of that hearing of the bench trial on the merits. So, 30 days from there, we're expecting to see some kind of updates from Cook County or from the Southern District of Illinois federal judge Stephen McGlynn. But you've got other cases as well, including the FOID card case, which there have been multiple FOID card cases. And in particular, an appeals court has denied delaying Illinois' firearm owner ID challenge. So go to thecentersquare.com. You'll be able to see this headline here. Appeals court denies delaying Illinois' FOID challenge. State Supreme Court denies the ammo tax appeal. We talked with Todd Vandermeide about the ammo tax appeal last week, but I wanted to share the conversation I had with Gun Save Life. So an appellate court has denied another attempt by the state to delay a case challenging the FOID card. Gun Save Life, they sued the state alleging the FOID card's unconstitutional. Now, last year, a Sangamon County judge sided with the state, ruling that the law is constitutional. So that was the district state-level court in Sangamon County. And then it went to the appeals court. So Gun Save Life, they appealed, and since then, the state has motioned for 3 different extensions to file responses, and those extensions were granted. Now, in September, the state motioned to pause the case. So that's September of this year. They motioned to pause the case in order to await the outcome of a different firearm owner ID card challenge in front of the Illinois Supreme Court. Now, the appeals court said that the state has already had enough delays and that the case they're waiting for is not similar to the Gun Save Life challenge of the FOID card. I believe that they're actually looking to say, hey, the Illinois Supreme Court has a case that challenges the FOID card because somebody was in a vehicle and they didn't have the proper documentation and they had a firearm with them. So, we want to wait for the outcome of that. Well, the judge in this case, or at least the appeals court, the state appeals court in Illinois, said that that's not even the same case, and Gun Save Life is looking to challenge the constitutionality of the FOID card. So here's what the court said. Similarly, the state's brief in this case cited the standards for a facial challenge in a single paragraph and its standing section, and defendant still has not identified a specific set of circumstances when the FOID card act would be constitutional. Now, oral arguments have been set in this case in the appellate court for November 14th. I chatted with Gun Save Life Executive Director John Bach last week before the weekend, and he shared with us some of his thoughts about where we're at in this case and the importance of this case. So here's John Bach.
Well, it really doesn't matter what happens here in the Fourth Circuit. It's going to get appealed up to the Illinois Supreme Court either way, no matter who wins or who loses. And the Illinois Supreme Court's going to get a chance at that point to evaluate. Question is whether or not they'll follow the Bruin precedent and the rule of law. And of course, under Bruin, we know that there were no FOID cards in 1791, so there's no history to support the FOID card whatsoever. And ultimately, we're going to prevail. The question is whether or not the Illinois Supreme Court will do the right thing, or if we have to go to the U.S. Supreme Court to make this happen.
So obviously, this can go all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, which for some reason has historically really not addressed the issue of the constitutionality of the FOID card, right? We had a separate FOID card challenge that Attorney Thomas Magg brought forward that the Illinois Supreme Court a week and a half ago ruled they're vacating the case. They ultimately said that, there were some questions about standing, and so they didn't get to the crux of the issue of is the FOID card unconstitutional by requiring an individual to pay to get a card in order for them to exercise a fundamental constitutional civil liberty, the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's right there, right after the First Amendment right of, peaceable assembly, right, to practice whatever religion you want, free speech, free press. So it's a constitutional fundamental right. You don't have to have a card to say, hey, I'm going to, be with this group, or you don't have to have a card to say, hey, I'm going to be speaking my mind, or you don't have to have a card to say, hey, I'm going to, be a member of the press. Depending on where you're at, actually. I do have to have a press badge to get into certain areas, but if I wanted to print anything, I wouldn't necessarily have to have any kind of ID. So regardless, this idea of requiring a ID to simply exercise your constitutional rights, the Illinois Supreme Court really has not touched this. So I think that's why John Bach from Gun Save Life is saying they're going to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. So if the Illinois Supreme Court doesn't do anything with this and they punt, it's possible you could take this as a constitutional question to the U.S. Supreme Court. Here's Bach talking more about this case.
They have a tendency, as you well know, to sidestep the issue wherever they can to avoid making a proper decision. But ultimately, they don't have a lot of choice here. They're limited options, and anything short of them striking the FOID card down will result in us filing an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I think they know that it's going to lose there, and they would hopefully prefer not to be reversed by the U.S. Supreme Court, but I don't know. After all, J.B. Pritzker spent millions of dollars to put 2 of the 7 justices on the court, and we'll have to wait and see how the rest of the court looks at this, if they look at it per the rule of law as an inferior court, or if they want to play stupid with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go with the stupid option.
Again, Bach mentions the fact that on the Illinois Supreme Court, Governor J.B. Pritzker gave $1 million to each of 2 Supreme Court justice candidates in the 2022 election, and those candidates did not recuse themselves in cases where Pritzker was a defendant being sued because of laws that he himself signed into law, like the challenge of Illinois' gun ban enacted in January of 2023. So we'll see what ultimately happens with this case, but clearly the appellate court no longer giving the state any more delays. They've got a November 14th hearing that they're going to do in the appellate court for state court on the constitutionality focused on the Bruin standards of text, history, and tradition. Was there, in the founding of this country, when the Second Amendment was ratified, a requirement for individuals to have their state police issue a firearm owner ID card in order for them to exercise their rights to keep and bear arms, to be able to buy ammunition, to be able to buy a firearm, to be able to even to possess a firearm in the state of Illinois? Here's John Bach with some final thoughts.
I think that's about it. I would just thank the National Rifle Association Institute for Legislative Action for helping us with this, and also our Gun Save Life members for being members and helping facilitate this whole process. Ultimately, it's our members that make us strong, and with the backing and support of the National Rifle Association's Institute for Legislative Action, we're here probably 2, maybe 3 years away from getting rid of the FOID card altogether, and boy, won't that be a glorious and momentous day.
So thanks to John Bach for letting me chat with him last week. Gun Save Life, a litigant in a case challenging the firearm owner ID card. One of several challenges against the FOID card that are out there. Focus Daily, I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for being part of the program. And join us each and every weekday morning live as we give you Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and get the podcasts anywhere you get your podcast with Illinois in Focus. All right, that's all I got for you today. We'll have to revisit the economic situation tomorrow, so be sure to follow us here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Subscribe to America's Talking Network to get